Hello everybody, today I'm going to be making a video on how to create an assignment in Google Classroom. The purpose for this particular kind of assignment is that students can take it online, they can complete the assignment online, and as soon as they hit submit on the assignment, they will be able to get feedback for what they did correctly, incorrectly, and you will also get a record that they did the assignment. For this period in time, between now and the end of the school year, due to the coronavirus expectations, the advantage of this is that it is minimal grading on your part, but it does provide feedback for the students for what they are understanding and what they are not understanding. Like I said, it gives you the pretty easy way to record who has and has not completed a particular assignment. Also, by the way, allows you to take attendance. If they've completed the assignment, you can count that as a present if that's how you want to do it. So, first thing obviously we want to do, we're going to Google Classroom. We're going to go into Google Classroom. As you see here, I've got my various classes already set up, but we're going to go into my sandbox because this is a sample test we're going to be generating. And we're going to be creating an assignment. To create an assignment, you go up here, click on classwork, and you see I already have a couple of assignments here. We're going to create a new one. You have assignment, which is a pretty traditional sort of assignment where you would say assign some problems or maybe give them a link to Delta Math exercise or a Khan Academy exercise. And you have quiz assignment. This is the one we're going to be focusing on. It's the quiz assignment. Despite the name quiz assignment, this is really just an assignment where you've attached a Google form where they fill out the Google form and submit the Google form, and Google will evaluate that form. This can be used for exit tickets or for warm-ups in those environments where you have one-on-one computer access. It can also be used for our purposes today, and it can also be used for an actual quiz, which I will discuss when we get down to that topic. Anyway, we go ahead and click quiz assignment, and it creates this. You would put in the name for your quiz. So let's put in some name for the quiz. This is the name of your assignment. This is not necessarily the words that are attached to the quiz yet. This is what the students will see when you assign it to them. And in this spot, you would put whatever you want to call your assignment. Let's keep it easy today. And under the instructions, this would be whatever instructions you have for your students. And down here, you have your actual quiz. You see over here, it says locked mode on Chromebooks. If you were doing this quiz in an environment where you could monitor and you're concerned about them jumping into other windows in order to cheat or goof off or whatever, you can go ahead and put locked mode on Chromebooks. And what this would do is it would freeze the Chromebook to only this window while they're taking this particular quiz. In this setting where students are taking this from home, or any setting for that matter where students are taking this from home, probably not a lot of purpose to doing this, but if you're in a classroom and you want to make sure they're staying on the exercise, you would want to make sure to turn this on. Over here, you have a blank quiz. If you click into the blank quiz, it opens into a new window. Notice we now have a new tab, a new window. This is an actual document. This is like you might have a Word document or an Excel document. This is a Google Forms document, so this is your actual quiz. The advantage of doing it this way, of having a separate document, that means that you can reuse this quiz, you can attach this quiz to a different classroom later if you wish to, and so on and so forth. The disadvantage, I think, is it might be a little bit more confusing to somebody who's new to this concept, but I really do like this concept that the quiz document is a different document than the class itself. It does add one additional step. Hopefully, at some point in the future, Google Classroom will clean this one step up. Or perhaps I'm missing something, but at this point, we'll talk about this one extra step at the end. And this is where we would start making our quiz. And this exercise name could be the same as what you called the assignment. It could be something different or related. Whatever you want to do with it, we're going to call this arithmetic review just for the sake of having an example. And you'll notice down here you already have one question. Obviously, you can't have a question. You can't have a quiz without a question. Now, your first question will probably want to be name. This will be the student's name. You want to have 0 points. You want to have this required. Now, technically speaking, because of the way that this system works, you don't really need to do this, because when you set it up as an assignment, it will automatically attach the document responses to the email account. But because our email accounts are the way that they are, they're just a number, there's nothing indicating a name in them. You might want to put the name in here just so that if you want to check in on somebody's results later, it's a lot easier to do so. So go ahead and put the name in there, make it required. Okay, one thing you may have noticed is that when we put in name, it changed the question type to short answer. Google Forms will do this. It will try to predict the kind of question you have. Notice that we have a bunch of options here. The most common option you'll probably want to be using are multiple choice and checkboxes, but we do have a short answer option, and we also have a paragraph option, as well as a drop-down option for that matter. As you play with this, as you get more comfortable with this, if you want to make more complicated quizzes, there are some options here, obviously, but for this video, we're going to stick mostly to the multiple choice and to the checkboxes. Okay. We'll talk about this answer key just now because we're going to create a question that has an answer key. So for instance, we might add, what is 3 plus 5? Okay, this is going to be a multiple choice question. We're going to put some options in here. Notice that we do have an option to click to add more options. However, there is an easier way. So all you have to do to add another option, put in your first option and then press enter. Put in your second option, press enter, third option, and finally we do want the answer in there. And we can have any number of possibilities here. If you want to add the word other, you can click on add other, or you can continue to add options. Now, how does Google Classroom know what the answer is? You click on the answer key button. You tell it that's the correct answer right there. You do want to assign some number of points for it. Let's assign 5. And we're going to make this question required as well. And that is how you would create a multiple choice question. If at any point you want to see what the student is going to see, you're going to go up here to the I, the preview. You're going to click on preview. And you'll see here, this is what the student form will look like. They'll put their answer, they'll put their name in here, they'll put their answer in here, and they'll click submit. We don't want to click submit yet. Okay, let's add another question. So we're going to add a checkbox question here. Okay. I know this is an arithmetic question, but this is a sample question, sample quiz as well. Okay, so which of these is an animal? Notice what happens over here. When I say check all that apply, just the word check, in fact, the word check triggered this switching to checkboxes. And then we can go ahead and put in some answers. And go ahead and enter the answer key. Okay, this is worth 5 points, and notice, okay, and then you'll go ahead and check it off. Now notice for a check-off question, you're going to have to check everything that's correct. Now in this case, you may realize, oh, I made a mistake, silly me. All of these are animals. We might want to change the question. So we can go ahead and change that question to which of these is a mammal. Make it a little bit more interesting than this. I'm going to switch this to a salmon. We go back to our answer key make our corrections. Now, you might have noticed, you'll see here it says a human is a mammal, it says an elephant is a mammal, and it says a duck, a salmon, and a dolphin are not mammals. Yes, I know this is a mistake. I'm doing this for a purpose, and I'll show you that in a second. Here you have your answer, and again, if you want to see how this looks to the students, there you go. That's what it looks like to the students. Let's do one more question, because if you're creating certain kinds of tests, certain kinds of questions, this is especially true perhaps in math class, but also other classes as well if you want to have a picture or something like that. Okay, so let's say we want to create a question that has a picture attached to it. Various reasons, obviously, that you might want to do this. You would create a question, and over here you have your picture icon. You would click your picture, and here you have a couple of different choices. You could upload it if you have it on your hard drive or on the Google Cloud Drive or something like that. You could upload your file here. You could go here through your camera, or you could go by URL. In this case, we're going to go find a picture of the Eiffel Tower. We've done this over here. And here's our nice picture of an Eiffel Tower. We're going to copy the image address, and hopefully that's a good image address there. Go over to URL, paste that image in there, and there we go. There's a nice little insert in our image. Okay. We would ask a question like, what is this? And then we might have some options. Okay. We're going to go to our answer key, and clearly the correct answer is the Eiffel Tower. Don't forget to make it worth some points. And there's your question set up. Okay, now, down here, we're going to make it required. And down here, you notice we've got our three little buttons. We've got a few options here. One of our options is shuffle option order. What this means is that every single time this is generated for a student, they will see these options in different orders. This is potentially useful if you're concerned about two students looking on each other's screens. You can go ahead and do that. Obviously, if they're working from home, this is not going to necessarily be an issue, but they still might send each other photos of the screens, and you want to make it a little bit more difficult, I suppose, for them to cheat. Notice that right now we have this order: Space Needle, Eiffel Tower, My House, and Hamtramck. If I look at the preview, you'll see that same question. These are not in the same order. Now it's Eiffel Tower is the first option. I can go ahead and close that preview, open that preview again, and now Eiffel Tower is the third option. So it's going to be shuffling those options like we asked it to, which is good. Okay. Now, if you decide you don't like this question after all, you can go ahead and click on this delete button, and it will get rid of that. And by the way, you'll notice that as you hover over each one of the answer options, you also get that picture as an option. So you can insert a picture on any one of these options as well as on the main screen. Okay. I'm going to create one more question. You realize, oh shoot, I forgot to add a question up here before this question. So we're going to go ahead and, if I want to insert it before this question, this insert new question will always add a question after the question that you've selected. So if you select this question, the new one will pop up down here. Okay. Now let's say we want to go ahead and add a math question in here. It's going to be a little more complicated. For this one, we're going to have to generate our own question. And the way we do this, one way to do this is we go ahead into Word. Word, by the way, has a very nice equation editor. The Microsoft Suite in general has it, but it works best, in my experience, in PowerPoint, OneNote, and in Word. To get to that equation editor, you press Alt-Enter at the same time as we do here. There are two ways to generate an equation. The first way is to use all the drop-down menus up here, and the second way is just to type it in here. If you're familiar with typing equations, and especially if you're familiar with a piece of software called a typing language called LaTeX. This is very similar to that. If you're not familiar with that, it's fairly intuitive, but there are some things that you might need to figure out. This was an integration question, so I'm going to type int, and I'm going to type underscore. You'll notice that what happened as soon as I typed that underscore, the symbol got converted to an integration symbol. I'm going to do an underscore and then put a number on the bottom, and the caret will put a number on the top. That creates a nice little integration sign. Obviously, most of you will not be doing something quite as advanced mathematically as this, but it's nice to have this option. We also have a dotted box to show what we're going to integrate or what the argument of our function is going to be. Type in x squared dx, which mathematically is fairly simple integration problem. This is a little bit more work than just going and finding a picture. And the next step we have to do is we have to do a screen capture of this image. On Windows, the way to do a screen capture is to press Windows Shift S, and that will do us a screen capture, and it'll clip it to the clipboard. Once you've gotten in the clipboard, you can go ahead and click on that image, open it up, and you'll be able to save it either by clicking the icon or by pressing in Windows, pressing Control S. So go ahead and save that clip, name it something useful, whatever you want to. We're going to call it integration sample in this case. Now, by default, this particular thing saves as a PNG file. It doesn't really matter as long as it's one of the major graphic image formats. Whatever you need to use that as. Once you've saved that file, you can go ahead and go back into your quiz, and this time you're going to use upload and browse to find that image, and go ahead and find the appropriate image and insert it. And now that you've done that, there's your integration problem right there. So in this case, we're going to put in some answers. The correct answer, by the way, is 72. The correct answer is 72, but we're going to put in some other answers. 108 is what you get if you divide by 2 instead of 3, which is a common mistake a student might make. Another mistake a student might make is not integrating at all, so that might be 36. And just to confuse students, we'll put in negative 72. Okay, we go ahead and create our answer key. Our correct answer is 72. Give it some points, and we're done. Okay, so now we have a nice little quiz, 4-question quiz. Now you might decide, wait a second, this mammal question should go earlier. I don't like it. Notice I can go ahead and click on my left mouse button, hold and drag, and we can change the order of our questions. As I said before, you can delete a question. If you decided you wanted a question just like this one, except you're going to change the integration, you can go ahead and hit the duplicate, and that will create a second question identical to it. You can just change a few details, and then you have a second question exactly like it. We don't want that one, so we're going to get rid of it. And you might even go over here and you might say, you know what? This quiz is starting to get a little bit long. We don't want it all on one screen. What we want to do if we don't want it all on one screen, or if we want to break it up for the students, is we're going to go ahead and add a section. And again, wherever we are selected, that's where the sections are going to be created. Notice that in this case, the section was created after the one we highlighted. We say part 2, whatever we want to call this section. This will allow us to either put in a description, or we can go ahead and hide the description. And if we want this question to be in section 2 instead of section 1, we go ahead and drag it as we want to. Okay, now when we preview it, we'll see that this will be just the first section will be here. And then we can go ahead and, if we hit next, notice we can't hit next because these are required, but if we had answered these, so we'll answer these. Hit next, and we have the next question. Notice it allowed us to go on even though we didn't answer this mammal question. It still allowed us to go on. That's because this mammal question was not marked as required. If you want it required, you go ahead and have to say as much that it is required. We want to probably most of the time want to make sure that all of our questions are required. But if you don't want them required for whatever reason, perhaps they're extra credit questions, or perhaps you just want some kind of indication they did some problems, you don't have to mark every question as required, obviously. And in fact, you see the default is not to require the answer. So here we have our quiz. In case we're losing track of how many points our quiz is worth, it's right up here. It says total points is 20. When we're all happy with our quiz, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and save it as something other than named blank quiz. So we're going to, once again, one other place, so this is a little annoying, one other place we're going to have to name it something more interesting than blank quiz. Okay, so we're going to name that arithmetic review. And we're going to go ahead and, if we're happy with this quiz, we're going to go ahead and save it. Now, one comment that I was going to make, and this mistake here, if you remember, I mentioned before, that a dolphin is in fact a mammal. If you went ahead and assigned the quiz and you had a half a dozen students take the quiz and you're looking at their results and realizing, oh boy, they're all marking dolphin. What's wrong with them? They're so stupid. And then you realize, oh, no, it's me. I'm the stupid one. Dolphin is a mammal. You can go ahead and go back to the answer key and correct your problem. And when you do that and go back to where we're going to go in a minute and submit their scores, it will automatically adjust or update their scores. If you do that, even after some students have taken the quiz, and you go back into Google Classroom and make this correction, when you re-import the scores, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute, it will correct those questions even if the students already got a score for them. So that's important to know. If you have assigned a quiz assignment and you realize you made a mistake on the answer key after some students have already taken it, it will correct the scores for those students as well. So that's an important key. At any rate, because of the nature of Google Documents, once you've made any changes, it automatically saves those changes. So that change is now saved in the file. We can go ahead and close this file out. All right. Now, this quiz, though, is not that document now because we saved it as a different name. We're going to want to get rid of this document, and we're going to want to add the document we just created. In that case, this one right here, we're going to add that document. So we now have a document attached to our assignment. We have everything up here. We're going to want to change our points to match what's on the document itself, which is 20 points. Select a due date if we want to select a due date. Now, if you want to assign it to multiple classes, you go up here to 4, and you get multiple classes. You select whatever classes you want to select it for. If you want to assign it to some of your students in a single class, you go ahead and select the class up here, and then select whatever students. In this class, you're not going to see any students because it's my sandbox, so I don't have any students in this particular class. But if this were, say, any of these other classes, I would have some students in here, and I could say, you know what, I'm not going to give it to all of my students. I'm going to handpick which students are going to take this particular assignment. Once we're all done with this, we go ahead and assign it. And when we assign it, it creates an assignment here. The moment you do that, an email goes out to everybody on your roster saying there's a new assignment, giving whatever instructions it gave them, and they're going to come in here and they're going to go ahead and do the arithmetic review quiz. You'll see that says view assign. Right now, I have 0 turned in and 0 assigned. That's because I don't have any students to this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at a sample assignment I created for some students so we can see what that part looks like to the teacher. So this is our basic sample test. Again, if we go into this Google form, until you've actually taken the test yourself, you will see the blank version of what students see once you've submitted it. So let's look at what it looks like when a student takes it. So the student gets the form, they put in their name, or whatever they want to, obviously. Put in the answers. We're going to say duck, human. Those are mammals. Okay, I can now click on next. Integrate the following. I think that's -72. I think that's the Space Needle. Notice students can get a copy of their responses sent to them. This is not something necessarily that they need to do, because what they're going to do on the next screen is they're going to submit score, and it says view score. This is what the students would want for their instant feedback. So this is where you would direct students to go to. You'd say, look at the view score button, look at the view score, and it will give you all the information. Notice, as I said, it does track the email address on the submission of the form. It gives you your name, and it very clearly marks what's right and what's wrong. In this case, yes, I got 3 + 5 correct. Hooray. I got this mammal question wrong. Here are the correct answers. I got this question wrong. Here's the correct answer. It tells you what the correct answer is and what the incorrect answer is. Okay. Now, one comment about this is, notice that it says down here at the bottom, this form was created inside Hamtramck Public Schools. What that means is that in order to complete this specific exercise, you have to be using a hamtramckschools.org email address. So this keeps this from being out in the wild from anybody at all completing this exercise. Because remember, this is a Google Forms document, but in order to get into the Google Forms document, you have to have the appropriate institutional address. And in order to complete the document, in order to submit the document, you have to have a proper institutional address. If students are saying, I can't get onto this form, I can't do it, it says permission not allowed, permission not given, or whatever, one thing to always ask them is, are you currently logged on to your institutional address? I have that problem all the time because my default address is my personal address, so I have to, whenever doing anything school related on my home computer, I have to remind myself to switch over to my work address for the purposes of anything I'm doing on here. Same thing is true of the students. This recorded my work address here, and that's the email that's attached to this. Notice that once I've done this once, if I go back into this form again, it will tell me I can't do it because I've already filled it out. So this is the basics on how to create a basic quiz assignment. And again, quiz assignment is in quotes because it's not necessarily what we would think of as a quiz. It could be any sort of exercise you want, where you want to give the students instant feedback, and at the same time, you want Google Classroom to record it with minimal effort from you for the recording documentation purposes. It's not completely zero work, but it is, I think, easier work than assigning something from Delta Math, which is also a good idea, of course, but assigning something from Delta Math and then transferring the scores into this will transfer the scores in a much more straightforward way. So let's see how that works. We're going to go into a different class. In this case, I'm going to go to my calculus class, and I assigned in something here. I just asked them to fill this out. This is completely silly. It has nothing to do with calculus, but it's just something I asked them to do so that I would have some sample data to show you what it looks like from your end after some students have completed this assignment. So if we want to view the assignment, we see that 11 students have turned this in and 9 students have not turned this in. That's what that means. If you want to know how many students are in the group of students to which it was assigned, you would add these two numbers up. In this case, I have 20 students in my calculus class. 11 of them have turned it in, 9 of them have not turned it in. We can go ahead and view the exercise, and as we view the exercise, we can see some of the students over here have gotten points because I've already reviewed their work. Other students do not have points yet, and down here we have the students who haven't done it yet. Over here we have an import grades. This is the button that allows you to go ahead and transfer the points into here. So wherever it already says 10 out of 10 or 5 out of 10 or whatever it says over here, that's because I already imported their grades. These are students who have taken it since then and they don't have anything showing. When I press the import grades button, it says, are you sure you want to import? It will overwrite the current grades. That's fine with me. This is, by the way, the key point. So let us say that you went over here and you noticed, oh, a bunch of students have done this. You reviewed it and realized, oh, shoot, I got question 3 wrong. That's why these students have gotten less than perfect scores. Let me correct the answer key. And then you would go over here to import grades. That would write over any points that are already over here. So that's fine. As long as you're not doing any hand grading, if you're not doing any changes by hand, that's fine. Go ahead and import, and notice that it imports, takes a second, and notice now all of these grades have been updated and we're good to go. If you had any open-ended questions on your assignment, then you would have to go ahead and hand adjust the scores in here, as far as I can tell. I haven't really explored that entirely, but as far as I can tell, when I've worked with it, when I put in an open-ended question and put in some points, it will mark that question wrong until I personally go through and correct it. But for the purposes of this exercise, we're just going to go ahead and assume that these are all multiple choice and checkbox answers. Everything is either right or wrong, and these answers, these points are good. If you did any hand adjusting of these scores, which you can do very easily, just go ahead and click it in and change the score right here. You know what, I'm going to be nice to this student and give them an 8 instead. If I went back in and imported, notice that I changed that one student's grade. If I went back in and imported the grades again, it will change that back to a 5. So you want to make sure that any hand adjustments you do to these scores are done after you have imported everybody's grade from Google Classroom. So that's the basics of this portion. Now, you probably also want to see how each student performed on it. That's not something you're going to see from here. What you're going to want to see there, if you want to see how each student performed on the quiz itself, you're going to want to go back into the original document, which in this case, for the one I just showed you, is the silly sample exercise. Okay, here's the quiz itself. It shows what it looks like. And then over here we have our responses. We see we have 12 responses. If you remember over here, we have 11 students turned it in. We have 12 responses. Because this responses is anybody who's ever completed this exercise through any direction, any means at all. Since I did it myself, that's one of the 12. If you had, for instance, 3 classes and you assigned this to all 3 of your classes, this would be a count of everybody in all 3 of your classes that have taken it. So this is a grouping of everybody, not just that particular class. It's everybody who's taken this particular assignment or completed this particular assignment. Here we see we have one person got 0 points. We have 2 people who got 5 points, and we have 9 out of 11 got full credit. So these are our 3 possibilities. If we had a more refined number of points, we could see a very nice bar chart here. Here are our scores by email and our scores by name. That's blurred out for privacy reasons. And then we can see what each particular answer is, what each particular answer reflection is. Okay, so we got, most people got that this was a duck, but it also records for each incorrect answer. For each incorrect answer, it shows you how many people gave that incorrect answer. You'll notice up here you have 3 options. You have summary, question, and individual. What question does is it allows you to just basically break out and look at that and also adjust the scores for a particular question. So let's say you decided, you know what, this is kind of a tricky answer. I guess a goose is close enough. I'm going to give them 3 points instead of 0 points for that. So I can go ahead and adjust that to 3 points. Save that change. Okay, so now if you answer goose, you get 3 out of 5 points. Okay, and that means, by the way, we're going to want to go back and check to make sure that that change actually caught in the sample data collection. We'll go ahead and do that in a second. And then individual, we likewise have a drop-down box here. It allows you to pick any of the students who took this. For privacy reasons, I'm just going to limit it to my own answers. But there we have my answers. I said that was a duck. Hooray, I know what a duck is. And I have the correct answers down here as well. Like I said, if I were to click on the drop down or even select it here, I could go ahead and go through the students, just as over here with this with these arrows or with drop down, I could pick whatever question I wanted to look at. If I wanted to look at question number 3, I'd go ahead and look at question number 3. Okay, and again here, I could say, you know what, this is really good for the checkbox one because you know what, they got 2 of these out of 5 right, and they got 1 wrong. So we're going to call this 4 out of 5. And this person got 1 right and got 1 wrong. So we're going to go and call this 1 out of 5. So we can do this adjustment if we want to, and we can go ahead and save. Okay, notice that before, we did not have anything other than 0, 5, or 10. If we go back there, again, we don't have to save this. If we go back into here, and we import our grades again, notice now we do have some students who have something other than that. Their scores went up. And the reason why their scores went up is because we gave them some points for incorrect answers. Notice we did not have to do anything on this end. We just did it in the Google document, and we imported the grades. And when we imported the grades, it automatically adjusted the scores over here. So that's, I think, also a very nice feature of the way this is all integrated together. I think perhaps one of the key confusions, and once you get past this point, it's kind of downhill from there, is remembering we have 2 things in the Google world that are integrated together. We have the Google Form document, which is this. We have the Google Form document, which is what you do to edit. This is where you review all the responses. If you have to make any changes to the quiz on the fly, everything is here. This is a Google document. This Google Forms document can be accessed by anybody theoretically with a Hamtramck Public Schools account. That's why it attaches to the email address. And if you want to filter anybody out that doesn't belong, it's pretty easy to do so. And then we have the second thing, which is the assignment. This assignment is what records it for a particular roster or for a particular classroom. And this, I think, makes it very easy to track. So not only does the Google document from here update everything, but if you want to have a gradebook, Google Classroom keeps its own gradebook, and it's pretty straightforward to see that gradebook. You go ahead and click on into the classroom, go over to grades, and you'll see there's a gradebook here, and each column has the appropriate students in it. And notice that the grades over here match the grades that were in that other document. Now notice they all say draft. Over here, none of this says draft. Over here, it says draft. Draft simply means that right now you, the teacher, currently, quote, own the document. Once you're all done with it and you're happy with that particular grading, you would return it to the student, and that word draft disappears. The word draft really doesn't matter for grading purposes. Simply means that if you had some kind of assignment where you might want to give it back to the student for whatever reason, it unlocks it for the student to make edits or do whatever they want with that document. Honestly, I don't know if there's any huge difference between draft and not draft for grading purposes, but that's the distinction there. So I believe those are the basics on how to create an assignment that students can go ahead and complete on their own. they can get feedback as soon as they've submitted the document. They'll see what they got right and got wrong. Not obviously as good as detailed feedback about what their steps were incorrect. That sort of work would still be done on the teacher's end, but at least it gives them a quick thumbnail of where they are at. As I said, one use for this beyond this sort of assignment might be either an exit ticket or a warm-up. While students are coming into the Google Meet, for instance, you could create a warm-up that students could complete, and that would populate, and that would also serve as attendance for which students showed up on time. And at the end of your Google Meet, you could have an exit ticket that likewise you could have that assigned, and students could complete that assignment as they're leaving, and you could register all of that here in the gradebook and have some kind of record of who's showing up on a general basis. As you can see, for instance, from this, I've been having my calculus students watching the College Board videos on a daily basis. Most of them have been doing it every day, but I can easily see that I have 2 students here who have not turned any of these in. 2 students have not turned any of these in, and a third one who just started turning them in. And that enables me to quickly see, oh, who have I not seen at all? If administration comes back to me and says, who have you not seen at all this time period, I can look in here and say, oh, okay, well, I've seen almost everybody but these couple of students. So that's another nice thing about this gradebook, is that option. And again, obviously, I have blurred the names over here for privacy reasons. On your own screen, they should not be blurred when it's your classroom and your students. So quick overview, I think, of how Google Classroom and this particular assignment integrate together. Hopefully you found this useful, and have a nice day.